Hi, everybody. I'm Maddie Reardon, the Community Engagement Manager for Radio Milwaukee.
Hi, everyone. This is Salam Fatayed. I am the audio producer here at Radio Milwaukee.
And you are?
My name is Sojourner White, and I am a project and media strategist for Ubuntu Research and Evaluation.
Thank you so much for having this conversation with us. We know we're thinking about highlighting organizations for Community Stories Live. This was one of our top in our list, just because for me personally, I'm very curious of how this community organization runs and all like the back line of how everything goes. So if you just mind telling me a little bit, what is Ubuntu? And I apologize if I mispronounce that, but I believe it's Ubuntu.
Ubuntu.
Ubuntu. Cool.
Yeah, Ubuntu. Yeah. We're a professional learning community of Black women. So we help organizations, individuals, and community strategize how to better serve the community, in particular Black people, because we are a racial equity consulting firm. That's kind of the general term, even though we do a lot more than that. That's just what people link onto and are able to understand. But we do evaluation, is like the core of all the work that we do. We have someone who is an education strategist, Lynetta Davis, who does a lot of the education work. My background, I'm a social worker, so I have that background. We have Radea Ellis, who was a master in public health, and then which is a bunch of Black women from all different backgrounds doing incredible work with the skill set that we have in the various areas that we know best.
100%. I love how you said that you do more than what meets the eye, because you're kind of like a community that is aligned with uplifting other communities. So when this idea first originated, what was the backstory? What was the need to create like a group of Black women uplifting other community members?
Yeah, so we were founded by Dr. Monique Liston, who is our chief strategist and joyful militant. And she founded this when she was doing her PhD in urban education. She wanted to house her work in beloved community and dignity. And so Ubuntu was born. She'll tell you that it wasn't intentional. It was just a place for her to house her studies and what she was working on for a few years. And it's just morphed into what we all know today as Ubuntu. And because we saw a need that Black women need to be centered in all types of work, Black people in particular, and just being a part of an organization that is led by Black women, we have an intersectional lens in all the work that we do. And so that's just the gist of how Ubuntu was created. And from there, we work with government organizations or education or any background really that needs to center Black voices in what they do.
Do you know what year this Ubuntu was originated or structured?
So I just started in June, but my timeline is correct. 2017 was the official incorporation of Ubuntu, but that could be a year-ish off.
Okay. How has it been starting in the midst of quarantine? I'm pretty sure it might be like a few difficult things to navigate, connecting with other community members, but virtually.
Yeah, so it's been different. It's been different just starting at home, but we have a culture of where we are very transparent. I officially started last month, but I hopped on calls earlier to build rapport, get to know each other. We meet twice a week. So we've been doing what we need to do in order to build a nice community, even in quarantine, during the pandemic. So it's been a little difficult at times, just working from home all the time, but slowly we're gonna hopefully phase into some sort of schedule where we can balance between being in the office and being at home.
Yeah, this is for me, like personally, this is such a strange time because I feel like I'm used to working from home, but I'm also kind of like I want to like my productivity level has kind of dropped, so I'm trying to find other ways to work, but then you don't want to go outside. So this is such a strange time to start a job and be with work with other amazing women, but not seeing them face to face, because some things just don't really transcribe virtually.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did want to know because I'm very curious, do you know what Ubuntu means or what the significance of that term?
Ubuntu, I should know this. I do know this, and I'm blanking right now.
Don't worry about it. We'll look it up, yeah. Or get back to it. But yeah, I love the word, and I'm pretty sure it does have some significant meaning.
If I believe it's like coming together, I believe if that it's a very simplified definition of Ubuntu.
I love that. Okay, I will mark that and then look it up as well because that's something I'm very curious about. But when you're working and evaluating programs, before you start, typically, what is the main focal point? Is there something that you guys consistently are recognizing that needs to be addressed or done to have the seat at the table or that conversation starting?
Yes. Maddie put in the thing, it's I am because you are. I couldn't remember the
phrase. Cool,
yes.
Thanks, Maddie.
Yes, I couldn't remember what it was. Yes. So what we find is that Black people aren't being properly served in the organizations that they are always geared towards or given to as resources. And so that was like the core, what we see across the board. It's why we have the racial equity consultant, for lack of a better title, because we do that kind of work, but we also realize that dignity is a big part of not seeing people as human. Think of Ubuntu as I am because we are. I deserve dignity because I'm a human being and you're a human being, and we should know our self-worth. And so that is like the core part of Ubuntu, is just recognizing that Black people are not given the same dignity that we deserve. And so we go and help organizations figure out what does that look like, whether they work in healthcare, or they work in education, or they work in public service. What does dignity look like in all of these spaces for Black people to have better quality services, to feel liberated. And in the era of Black Lives Matter, what does it mean to serve Black people in a way that they deserve to be served?
Yeah, I think it's so important that this is being done, but do you feel that people come to you, or that you have to come to other community members to make that point come across? Has there been any like pushback or any resistance, or has it been like equally flow of sort?
Yeah, I mean, since I've only been here for 2 months, I have not felt any resistance thus far, but anytime you talk about Black people getting free and liberation, there's always pushback. That is because that makes people uncomfortable, because liberation is knowing that all of this, including Ubuntu, at some point, if we do achieve racial equity, which is something we've never had, like all of this has to go. We have to be willing to sacrifice so that people are able to live in a more equitable world. And so that scares people. And just understanding that, the policies and procedures that we have in place are not doing that. And I have not at this point faced any pushback. And from what I've seen, a lot of orgs come to us, especially now. We have an influx of work just because people are at home. You can't unsee what Black people have been going through for 400 years now. And so reckoning with that history, one of the things that we say is like, this takes work and this work is yours. Like, it's not just going to be on Ubuntu to approach all these issues, because our organization is not the end. It is not the solution for every single issue. However, we're doing the best we can in order to make a more equitable world.
100%, definitely isn't the end, but it might be like a start for some people. And also, I do completely believe that every single person has to move past the uncomfortable. And I believe I saw something on the site about how you were just saying that, like, it comes from us, like we sometimes put so much emotional tax on people that are oppressed to explain certain situations. So it's nice to have an organization that facilitates education initiatives, but also meeting people halfway and letting them do the work rather than you just bringing out a handbook per se.
Yeah, exactly, because this work is personal. Like, it's not just on Black people, it's not just on brown people. Everyone has to take a stand, especially white people, because we are functioning in a white supremacist and a racist world. Black people, we did not create this world, and yet we have to find tools in order to navigate it, which is obviously unfair and not liberation. And so we have to reckon with a lot of the issues that the pandemic has just amplified. racism was always here. Black Lives Matter was always here. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people, especially in Milwaukee and beyond, are trying to figure out what the heck we do. And so Ubuntu is one way of the many ways where people can get some type of strategy and organization.
100%. And I also think it is extremely internal, and it shouldn't just be like a face value thing of like, oh, you know, we're let's just say providing leadership positions and doing it just because the trend right now is to be racially woke, but it is something that needs to be worked on internally in your household, in your workspace, in your own way of thinking and mindset. I did want to go in depth of the 4 stages of evaluation, facilitation, program design, and coaching. Do you mind walking me through why those 4 steps are essential and maybe how that looks like? And for sure, probably it looks different with each organization, but a rundown basically.
Yeah, so it definitely looks different depending on the organization. But those are just key steps when you're building out a strategy, when you're trying to figure out how to evaluate a program or create a program or create new policies. You know, what does that entail? And so those are just 4 steps. And there's a lot of steps that go into each step that help you get to that point. The way it works normally is that an organization comes to us. They let us know, like, hey, we're having this issue. What do you think? A budget is normally given to us. And from there, we are able to go in and say, okay, this is what we can offer at this price, and just really map out based on the organization's needs. And those are just the key steps within that. And then based on the organization, based on what they do need, any of our strategists, whether that's education, we have a wellness and a capacity strategist as well, Dr. Angela Rose Black. So there's so many people that we have on our organization. Not so many, there's only 7 of us, but we are able to wear multiple hats. And so we just go in and from there, from what they offer or what they need, we offer our services. But those are just 4 of like the foundational steps that we have when you're building any sort of strategy or trying to solve any, or not solve, but design an approach for any problem. Those are just a few of the many things that we can do.
Yeah. And I know because, you know, you've been in this position for 2 months and it's still like that early stage, but have you so far maybe like learned anything about maybe yourself or the city of Milwaukee through just being part of this organization, Ubuntu?
Yeah, so I'm from Milwaukee originally, and I've been in and out of the city since going off to college. I was here 2 years ago, serving with AmeriCorps in the program Public Ally. So I got to know like the nonprofit world in some areas, like around Milwaukee. But then being at Ubuntu, it's definitely shed light on other organizations that I had never heard of, and I've been in the city. You know, I was here most of my life, and so it's been cool just to see all the different organizations and work with a bunch of different organizations. As far as learning stuff, I mean, anytime you put Black women on a team, you're gonna learn something, and so it's been great learning from my other team members, the other Black women on Ubuntu staff, just because we all have different backgrounds. Jada, who is another project strategist, you know, she served in Peace Corps, so just learning from her and her background and just getting to know people. It's been great. Even learning the frameworks of like beloved community, which is not something that is, I think, in the mainstream of knowledge. And so just learning more about that and what does it mean to be in community with people. What does it mean to, you know, not cancel them, but and call them out and also call them in, and how do you navigate all of that, especially in the world where it's like you say one bad thing and, you know, that's it. And so how do you move in a space that is more healing, especially our wellness and capacity strategist. She is amazing at reminding us to heal and rest and being in a spot where, you know, we understand that as Black women, the work we do harms us because we are addressing racial trauma in various organizations, and we need that space to talk to each other, to vent, to cry together if we need to. So it's definitely a great space to be in, especially for me coming out of like grad school and a very roller coaster of 2 years. It's been amazing to be a part of the team.
Honestly, like, you know, I personally have never interacted with anyone from your team, but just from hearing you, it does seem like it's a group of empowering women that are empowering each other, and just like a sisterhood and a community from within. And I love how you brought up that, you know, healing takes time. And, you know, for me, I have like two point of views about cancel culture. I think, you know, holding someone accountable absolutely needs to happen, but I think sometimes we need to give people spaces to learn. But
Yes.
also other times it's not my position to say if someone is canceled if it doesn't directly hasn't like insulted or harmed me. But I do want to ask you personally, is there any advice or any ways that you've been healing, navigating this world as a Black woman that you can give other Black women or people?
I definitely think something I've learned over the years is being very particular with like the energy and who gets to share that energy with you. I've been in spaces where I have not felt valued, whether that was in higher education or in workspaces. And so it definitely can take a toll on you in ways that you won't figure out till years later. So I think being really intentional about who you choose to be in that circle. Like, yes, we believe in beloved community. And yes, I believe there are spaces for everyone, you know, to learn. At the same time, there are boundaries that need to be had. And so boundaries are really important. I've been learning that as I've been in the professional workforce and figuring out what that looks like. Just having very solid boundaries, being honest and being open are really healing for me. And then just, this is, I guess, a more outward, but like for me, food is really healing. So sharing food with people and just being in that space with people, eating good food with people who value you and who see you for who you are and your like most authentic self is probably one of the most healing things that I've done over the years, because who doesn't love a good meal with good people? Like it, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Middle Eastern, so like when you said that, I connect with that because like growing up, being in the kitchen, cooking with my grandma, my mom, having brunch with friends, it always centers around food. And it's I don't know if there's like science behind it, but it is a weird comfort, like eating food with people and having conversation and sharing meals, opening up your doors and having other doors open up. So I completely agree with you. Like that is a source of healing for me too. Sometimes a little too much, like I can only do
Yeah.
it. So yeah, I love to hear that. Um, I do want to go into I know you said like putting boundaries and things like that, but has working with Ubuntu helped you navigate that? Because for me personally, like I sometimes feel like being a daughter of an immigrant that like the opportunities I have, like you have to kind of feel grateful for having them, but then also you don't know how to navigate where you should speak about certain issues or voice your opinion. You don't want to seem like you're too vocal or too assertive. How has that process been for you?
Just with Ubuntu in general, just with boundaries.
Yeah, just you know, have you has this organization helped that with you?
Oh yeah, so Dr. Black, we call her our chief boundary blocker, because she's really good at establishing boundaries, not only for us, but also making us establish them for ourselves, which in the short time has been really nice. But I think for me, I definitely was one, as a Black woman, I'm often tone police, you know, angry Black woman, bitter Black woman stereotypes. And so there was definitely a time where I made myself smaller in order to not be seen, to not be heard, at times, and I just kind of threw all that out the window like a few years ago. Just, I mean, it's a process. It's not totally done, but I think just recognizing that you have to be yourself, and sometimes that person is like loud. Sometimes I am angry, and I should be able to express anger without worrying about stereotypes or without worrying about, you know, racism or sexism or anything like that. And so once you kind of just accept and kind of do more internal work, as I've been trying to do, whether that's through, I do a lot of journaling. I'm a writer too, so I love to write. I love to read, and just finding those, as we were talking about earlier, like places to heal and ways to heal, has
Mm-hmm.
definitely helped me establish better boundaries and be more true to who I am and what I value and what I believe in, and using that to guide me into spaces like Ubuntu, which is probably one of the best spaces I've been in my short professional career. You know, I've been in a lot of really great spaces. I've been really grateful and thankful for that. But there's just something about working with a team of Black women that just brings me an extra bit of joy every single day.
Yeah, 100%. I'm pretty sure it's like, you know, because you have built this sisterhood of professional, amazing women, and hopefully one day I'll have the opportunity to meet everyone and be a part of that. But as a Middle Eastern woman, Maddie is a white woman. How can we help uplift Black women or the Black community in general, whether that is in professional spaces or just in general?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that people can help out. I would say for like pay Black women for the work that we do is probably the biggest one. And there's organizations like Ubuntu, like Love on Black Women, that you can do that, and you can support Black women in those ways. If you are more of a like policy government person, like there's always ways to reach out to your representatives and talk to them about issues, and write to them in support of issues such as like the Crown Act, which I don't know if you all have heard about. It's a race-based hair discrimination law to get rid of race-based hair discrimination for Black women. It's sponsored by Black women. It was written by Black women, and it's currently up in states across the U.S. And so that's like a policy issue. I don't believe it passed in Wisconsin, or it hasn't been decided yet. So writing to your representative saying, hey, you all need to be supporting this act because it is support of Black women, because if Black women are fired because of the hairstyles we wear, you know, then that further widens like the wealth gap and the gender pay gap and all these other issues that we face. So that is just one like policy way if people want to do it that way. But in your daily life, I mean, if you have Black women, fine, ask them how they need to be supported. I think a lot of the times we're always saying, you know, this group of people needs this without actually asking them what they need. So saying like, what do you all need from me? And seeing how you can be in support that way is another way you can do it. I can go on, but there's just like, there's just so many ways that you can support. And I would say the best way is just asking Black women, what do you need and how can I best serve those needs?
100%. And I think, you know, like for me, I've always been this person that always wanted to like advocate for other people, and then there was a time where I did it where I wasn't communicating and I didn't take a step back to listen, or get like maybe sometimes without realizing I would take over the platform and speak about experiences, like whether if I read something online or had a conversation, and rather than passing along the mic, like I would overshare. So that is something like I'm working on. But I think for this year and having these conversations with Community Stories Live, I think listening has been the greatest advice that I've given myself or received, because like you said, you know, you have to just, it's all based person by person and not every experience is the same. So taking that step back. So thank you for that, for sharing your input. There's a tagline on your website that says, fostering research-based accountability to create an equitable world. What does that mean to you specifically?
Yeah, for me, especially as someone who, you know, went through grad school, had been in some research settings before, a lot of the time research is not, it's not administered with Black people and Black culture in mind. Like if you look at the origins of what research is, it's a lot of white men deciding, you know, what needs to be researched and how it needs to be researched. And so to me, that means, you know, as Black women, we have a different lens that you can't get from other like research organizations or other evaluation organizations as well, because we're able to have that cultural aspect, and we understand that in order to build a more equitable world, we need to understand the people in it. So that goes into our approach of understanding whether that's, so for example, if we're going into an organization, we're trying to figure out, you know, what issue they want to be addressed. That means talking to people throughout the organization, whether that's the employees, the board members, just getting all of that information so we can figure out, what is the core issue. And I think that approach is just a lot more inclusive, and it gets to more of the root causes than just a general like survey. Like, I don't know if you've ever done like those climate surveys. Like, I don't even know what that really means, but like just getting to the bottom of what is actually going on and what needs to be addressed, and from there applying our different practices, evaluation, facilitation, strategy, all of that into the different approaches that we can create. So yeah.
And I know that you guys work with adults, but also like youth in schools. Has the conversation or the need been similar, or has it been different for young Black women and children and youth?
The need for like research and evaluation. Yeah, I definitely think so, because a lot of times like the youth voice is not included in these processes, even though youth have led social movements and a lot of the social change that we see generation after generation. And so, yeah, the issues are definitely there, and they are definitely the same. It doesn't matter what age you are, or Black people are at the core of our work, and their needs are across the board.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I'm Gen Z, like I'm on the line of it, but just seeing how people younger than me are advocating for their rights, for climate change, for the rights of other individuals, it's been truly inspiring. And I think, like you said, a lot of people don't give them the platform because it's a weird stage to be. You're too young, but you also, like, at what age is your voice accounted for? But they've inspired me a lot. I've recently just watched like a Gen Z conversation about race, and I learned about how they're using social media. I don't like how I'm saying that because I'm also young, but you know what I mean, just their tactics like TikTok and such. But I completely do the same.
Yeah, and it goes back to that people know what they need. And so I am not a Black mother, so I don't know what a Black mother of my age needs, but somebody does, and so you have to include people who are most affected by the issues in the process. Like, you can't just create policies that affect them and not include them. And so you have to include them throughout every step.
I completely agree, and you can't typically just have one person generalize for an entire community. There was a blog post on the website about Milwaukee. I'm not sure if you read it, but it is called "To the People That Think They Know My City," and it basically is it's a blog post about how whoever wrote this article, how they loved Milwaukee, but they see it as kind of a home, but it might be like an abusive home. And when I read this article on on the website, it connected with me because I think a lot of us can connect with having love and pride with our home, but also it's very complex because sometimes that could be toxic or needs improvement. But I wanted to get your perspective on your relationship with Milwaukee.
Yeah, so I don't think I think that was written. I don't know when that was written, but
in 19, so it probably was before.
Yeah, but I think for me and my connection to Milwaukee, like I was here throughout, young. I was born here, born on the north side of Milwaukee, and went to like Elm, Roosevelt, King, then went off to college, and I've traveled a lot outside of the U.S. as well as in the U.S. And so for me, I go to a lot of different places and I see what they're doing. I'm like, oh, Milwaukee could totally do this, and so it's almost like a source of inspiration. It's because, like everyone likes to say we're the most segregated city in America. Like, I would be in social work classes and people would bring up those stats all the time. And I think a lot of times Milwaukee is defined by stats and not people. And so that's where a lot of the disconnect, I think, comes from. It's like, no, Milwaukee's not perfect, but no city is perfect. Only some cities get to overcome their imperfections and get masked at these best places to live, but then best place to live for who, you know? And so that is, and all of that goes into how I view Milwaukee. Like, Milwaukee's always home. I've called places around the world home at this point in my life, but I always end up coming back to Milwaukee, because where my family is, it's where, like, the foundation that I personally, like, I wouldn't have the courage to do what I do and travel and see the world the way I see the world if I didn't have this solid community behind me. And so, yes, Milwaukee has enter XYZ issue, but at the end of the day, you know, it's home, and it's where, you know, I want to see it thrive. I want to see it flourish and be the city that, you know, I know it can be. And it's on its way. You know, people are working all throughout the city. I think one of the best parts of the pandemic is that a lot of things have been decentralized. And so you can see, you know, without the large festivals, without, you know, these big events, you know, all the smaller things that go on throughout the city. One of the things that we read at Ubuntu is called Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. And it talks about fractals and how working at the small things affect the whole. And so when I think about Milwaukee, all of the small group things that I see going on throughout the city definitely impacts how, you know, I see the city, how my mom sees the city, how my family, and how when I have friends who come visit, how I show them the city too. So it's also about perspective. And I think all of those things, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but all of those things come together for me and create how I see and how I view Milwaukee as my home.
Yeah, and I completely kind of like identify with that. I also really loved how you said, like, you know, a lot of people do center the conversation around the statistics rather than the community members of the people that live in Milwaukee. That took me a very long time to understand that too. I was born in Jerusalem. I lived here when I was really young, lived in Palestine for 6 years, came back in 2012. So my perception of Milwaukee has been like as an outside perspective, but also living within. And it took me a long time to recognize that although I do love Milwaukee, and like you said, I want to see it thriving, we should focus the attention on people that are doing the work and uplift their voices and their initiatives. Because I always used to be someone that would be like, I want to live in LA, I want to live in New York, because I had these expectations. Well, why can't it be here in Milwaukee? But what does a thriving community look like to you?
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
That's a
big question.
Big question.
Feel free to answer however you like. Community stories.
I mean, when I think of, I've been doing a lot of reflection on, you know, my role and my work now, and I think a thriving, you know, community is when there is not a need for racial equity consultants. You know, there's not a need for me to help organizations strategize and facilitate and evaluate and all the things we do in Ubuntu. You know, that people are able to just be without worrying about any of their social identities or how they're being perceived. Like, they're just able to live their life, whether they want, you know, to do whatever work they want to do. I think at this point, that's what I currently see as a thriving community. I think there are definitely pockets of people just being in the city. My mom is the director of Alice's Garden, the 2-acre urban farm in the city. And so I've seen, there have been nights where I've been there, people are just being, you know, there are children doing yoga, there are people, you know, laughing under the pavilion in the garden together. And so there are definitely spaces where people are thriving in the city, but I think just any space where people are able to just live their life without any worries is what I could envision a thriving community to be.
Oh, I love that answer. That was such a beautiful answer. I completely agree with you. I definitely am seeing, like, there is pockets of individuals that are thriving, and it might be like a personal thing, but as a city, Milwaukee is a long way to go. But at the very same time, a lot of people are doing the work, but oftentimes ignored, or the spotlight isn't on them. And unfortunately, I also think sometimes when white people do the work, they get more of the attention, and even if people have been doing it before them. Yeah, is there anything that a takeaway message that you would like to give whoever is listening about why these conversation, research, having spaces for coaching or programs, why is there a need for that?
Yeah. Let me think. My final thoughts. I think there's a need for spaces like Ubuntu and other organizations that are doing similar work in different sectors, because at the end of the day, it's what people deserve. Like, no one should have to worry about gun violence in their community. No one should have to go to school and worry about, if because there's a bias by a teacher that I will be suspended when I just really have a bad day. People shouldn't have to go about their lives in all of these areas worrying about the negative, or worrying about, well, hopefully I don't get in trouble today, or hopefully, I can make it home today. Like that, those just aren't worries that Black people in particular that we have every single day, that should not exist. And in a white supremacist world and a racist world, like, they do exist. And so I just hope whoever's listening knows that, places like Ubuntu exist to help with those situations, and to strategize and do all the things in order to do it. But at the end of the day, you have to take personal accountability for your learning, for your actions. Like, I know there have been a whole bunch of anti-racist reading lists going around and stuff, and while that is great, like, liberation is not going to be found in anti-racist reading lists. There's more work that needs to be done. And so I hope that whoever's listening to this, once they are done, they go see how they can take action, how they can support, because at the end of the day, that's what we need. We don't need any more paintings of Black Lives Matter on streets. We don't need all of these little things. Like, Black people need sustainable policies and resources and organizing and all of those things in order to truly be free. And so I hope that, this motivates someone somewhere to take some action today.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything, and Maddie, feel free to jump in, anything that we possibly didn't address or cover that you would like to point out?
Well, if you want to get connected with Ubuntu, we are at Ubuntu Research on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We'll be rolling out our Black August social media campaign, which is something that a lot of people, myself included, I was not familiar with. It's outside of, I know everyone knows, like, Black History Month, but Black August is another celebration that uplifts Black history, Black culture, and Black people. So if you want to follow us through the month of August and thereafter, you can check us out there, or feel free to connect with us on the website at www.ubunturesearch.com.
Of course, and I even was thinking as this conversation that there is opportunity that as an organization, Radio Milwaukee can utilize this organization as well, and we can build from within as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And thank you so much for your time.
Can I ask just one quick question?
Yeah, for sure.
My kids were kind of buzzing around back here, so I apologize for that. Did you say that you were a former ally with Public Allies?
Yeah, I was class of 2018.
And how do you see your service with Public Allies like trickling into the work that you do now, or does it, or like how did that experience kind of shape where you are now?
Yeah, so I did Public Allies. So the year before, I was living in Spain. I did a Fulbright fellowship there, and so I was teaching English and traveling, and then I kind of wanted to come back home, and Public Allies was the way that I wanted to do that. And so being there, being with allies, and just having these conversations in a time where I was like the only Black person in a lot of spaces when I was living abroad, and even when I went in undergrad, was definitely more of a healing space for me to be around people who I didn't have to explain myself to, and we could have these type of conversations. And I think honestly it trickled into me becoming a social worker as well. And then I did get connected with Ubuntu during that time too, because I've known Dr. Liston for a while now. And so I think I didn't realize it at the time. Maybe it was setting me up to come back home during the pandemic. But I think my time in Public Allies gave me a solid like friendship group, but also this skill set and this knowledge to have these types of conversations and in any setting. So I really enjoyed my time. I got to work with some really great people, and I got to learn a lot. And it required us to definitely, me personally, definitely be in more of a learning state of mind. And I think I take that into Ubuntu into any space I've gone in thereafter.
Awesome. Thank you so much for allowing me to sit and listen to this conversation. This was wonderful. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll work on getting this up on all our platforms as soon as possible. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.